Prime Minister announces a new auto strategy that scraps electric vehicle sales mandates, reintroduces EV purchase rebates, and rolls out a credit system for companies importing vehicles into Canada.
The future of the auto industry is increasingly electric, and companies that manufacture and invest here would earn credits. We will not miss this opportunity.
Trump thought he was squeezing Canada's auto industry. What actually happened is something nobody in Washington saw coming. Because instead of backing down, instead of yelling back, instead of running to the microphones, Mark Carney quietly changed one rule, and suddenly the world's biggest car makers started looking north. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Here's the truth most headlines are missing tonight. This wasn't an EV announcement. This wasn't a climate speech. And it definitely wasn't a retreat. What happened inside a low-key auto parts plant outside Toronto was Canada flipping the board in the middle of a trade war, without firing a single shot. And if you blinked, you missed the moment Canada stopped reacting to America and started setting the terms. For years, everyone told you the same story. Canada's electric vehicle mandate was sacred, untouchable. Environmental groups said it was the backbone of the country's climate future. Analysts warned any leader who messed with it would get crushed politically. The media framed it like holy ground. Change it, and you're done. That's what everyone believed, and that's exactly why what Carney did next matters so much. Standing on a factory floor with no dramatic music and no shouting, Carney said something that sounded harmless at first. Canada would pursue its own sovereign path to cutting vehicle emissions. Sovereign path. Two quiet words that completely changed the game. Because what he was really saying was this: Canada is done building its economy around someone else's rules. The old EV mandate is gone. The one that demanded all new cars be electric by 2035. Completely scrapped. And before critics could even finish celebrating or panicking, Carney replaced it with something far more dangerous for America's leverage. Instead of forcing one technology, he forced one outcome. Deep emissions cuts. Hard numbers. No excuses. From 2027 to 2032, automakers now face emission standards nearly twice as strict as before. But here's the twist. Canada no longer tells companies how to get there. Electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, ultra-efficient gas engines, that's their problem now. The rule is simple. Cut emissions by 57% per mile, or you don't sell cars in Canada. Period. This isn't softer policy, it's sharper. Because a rigid EV mandate during a trade war becomes a weakness. If you force all electric sales before your domestic supply is ready, you end up importing vehicles, often from the same country, hitting you with tariffs. That's money flowing straight out of your economy. Carney saw that trap coming, so he killed it before it could be used against Canada. And then came the money. $2.3 billion. That's how much Ottawa is putting behind a new consumer incentive program, up to $5,000 back for buying an electric vehicle, up to $2,500 for a plug-in hybrid. But there are strings attached, very deliberate strings. The vehicle must cost under $50,000, and it must come from a country Canada has a free trade agreement with. Let that sink in. That single sentence quietly locks China out of the Canadian EV market. The cheapest electric cars on the planet, flooding global markets, are suddenly irrelevant here. And then Carney added the line that made global automakers sit up straight. There is no price cap on Canadian-made vehicles. None. Build it in Canada, and the rebate applies, even if the price is higher. That's not climate policy. That's a neon sign pointing straight at Ontario that says "Build here." And the incentives aren't permanent. They peak in 2026, then shrink every year until disappearing in 2030. That's not an accident. That's a countdown. A ticking clock telling every automaker on Earth, move now or miss the window. Within hours, something remarkable happened. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, a man who has fought Ottawa on almost everything, came out in full support. No hedging, no criticism, just straight approval. When leaders from opposite sides suddenly speak the same language, you know something deeper has shifted. Ford didn't sugarcoat why. He said the old EV mandate was hurting competitiveness and threatening jobs, while Trump was actively trying to drag auto production south. Translation: Canada finally stopped playing defense. But the real masterstroke came in the part almost nobody is talking about. Tariffs. If the United States keeps auto tariffs in place, Canada is exploring a tradable credit system. Here's how it works. Companies that invest and manufacture in Canada earn credits. Companies that want to sell cars in Canada without paying tariffs must buy those credits. From who? The companies building inside Canada. This isn't retaliation, it's transformation. American pressure doesn't drain Canada anymore, it feeds it. The harder Washington squeezes, the more valuable Canadian production becomes. Trade lawyers hate this idea because it's legal, clean, and brutally effective. Trump's tariffs turn into revenue streams for Canadian factories. That's not fighting back. That's using gravity. On top of that, billions more are flowing into funds designed to help Canada's auto sector reduce its dependence on the U.S. market altogether. For decades, Ottawa treated access to America as everything. Carney is building the infrastructure to survive without permission. And then there's charging infrastructure. $1.5 billion to make charging as normal as filling up a gas tank, even in rural and northern communities. Because people don't buy EVs for ideology. They buy them when life is easy. Critics screamed from every direction. Conservatives said it helps American firms, progressives questioned Carney's climate commitment, Greens called it a joke. And yes, parts of those critiques are fair. The numbers aren't perfect. The timeline isn't infinite. Some details are still promises. But here's what those voices ignore. Context. Canada is in a trade war. The U.S. president has openly said he wants auto jobs pulled south. Supply chains are under attack. Confidence collapsed when rebates ended, EV sales dropped and never recovered.